The organization runs high school sports.
Well, 2 days after the attack on America, the nation comes together to put fallen pieces back together. Good evening, I'm Pat Grace.
And I'm Susan Honorad. We're going to begin our coverage of the attack on America tonight with Mark Despotakis live in the newsroom. Mark, I understand the rescuers have found some firefighters alive in New York?
Thank you, Susan. Actually, that story I've just actually found out is only somewhat true. That was reported earlier today that there were 5 firefighters had been rescued. That turns out to be false. Here's how the story reads. Despite earlier confirmation from police and hospital officials, fire department officials said the confusion about these firefighters began after rescuers on Thursday fell down a steep pile of debris from the collapsed twin towers of the World Trade Center and then landed underground. When they were rescued, others at the scene misinterpreted that these were firefighters from earlier. Also, let me give you a couple other bit of information. You're looking at some tape from yesterday. I just think it's some of the most miraculous tape that we have seen of a cameraman, WNYW cameraman, running with his camera and the building just coming crashing down around him. Actually, that's not from yesterday. That is from Tuesday. Some other bits of information. Tonight, the Capitol was evacuated, and all New York City airports were shut down. The Capitol was evacuated just before 6 o'clock. It looks as if it was a bomb threat, but lawmakers were allowed back into the House and Senate after about an hour. Meanwhile, the FAA said JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark airports have been shut down due to, quote, an FBI activity. The black box has been found in the Somerset crash. We've been reporting on that all week because that does hit us pretty close to home. That black box has been found. Also in Washington, they're saying that they're hearing the signals of the black box from the flight data recorder for American Airlines Flight 77, which went into the Pentagon. Also, Vice President Cheney has been moved to Camp David as, quote, a purely precautionary measure in the aftermath of the terrorist attacks. And also, Turkish military sources said the United States have bolstered their presence at an airbase near the Iraqi border. And stock markets plan to resume trading Monday at 9:30. So obviously there's just so much information. I mean, I have a stack of information here. So many new things have happened. I keep saying this is almost like some information overload. So much information coming in. It's very difficult to process it and get out as much as possible. But that is the situation as we know it now. That's kind of the latest information we have for you. For now, reporting live from the newsroom, I'm Mark Despotakis, TV5 News. Back to you.
Thanks, Mark. Well, after the worst attack in its history, the country is struggling to deal with the aftermath of devastation. Americans are looking to the Bush administration for explanations and for retaliation. Today, White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer said President Bush has the authority of the nation to respond as a matter of self-defense. He went on to confirm that the president is calling on the people of the country to join him in remembering all those touched by this week's losses. 2 days after the attack on America, rescue workers are still hard at work trying to find any survivors of the World Trade Center collapse in New York. Kelly Esno is live with this part of our story. Kelly?
Another difficult day in New York and Washington as searchers continue their search for survivors.
We've also received now 3 construction workers, and these are among the first construction workers, civilian construction workers from down at Ground Zero who have been injured. A number of falls have taken place. It's very treacherous underfoot, I understand, and so we are going to start receiving more of these.
That were found today was not from the original collapse of the World Trade Center, but from a previous accident today. But that news of that rescue has given hope to searchers that they will find more survivors in the coming days. I'm Kelly Esno, live in the newsroom. Now back to you.
Thanks, Kelly. Let's take a step back from the whole situation and look at some of the players. CNN's Christian Amanpour takes a look at the who's who of this attack on America.
When the Soviet Union invaded the treacherous and mountainous terrain of Afghanistan on the eve of the 1980s, it quickly found its own Vietnam. This superpower was taken on and eventually forced out by a network of Afghan guerrilla groups known as the Mujahideen. The Cold War was still on, and the United States helped recruit these resistance fighters through its allies in the region, allies like Pakistan, which borders Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden was one of those fighters, and after the war with the Soviets, he took control of the guerrilla network, which was swelled by fighters from all over the Islamic world.
Bin Laden's group grew out of the Mujahideen forces that were trained initially by the Pakistani intelligence services and the Pakistani military, and also, of course, funded by the United States.
But the United States is faulted for failing to track the growing ranks of radical Muslim guerrillas once the Soviet occupation ended. Afghanistan then descended into civil war and eventually split into two main blocs. On one side, the Northern Alliance, a loose network of ethnic minorities, nominally led by the charismatic Ahmad Shah Massoud, known as the Afghan mastermind of the Soviet defeat. He has not been seen since a bomb attack by assassins last week. On the other side, the Taliban, a fundamentalist Islamic movement representing the ethnic majority. They captured the capital, Kabul, in 1996 and are now in control of almost all Afghanistan. But their repressive regime, particularly their harsh treatment of women, have earned them almost universal condemnation. The West also accuses the Taliban of harboring Osama bin Laden, America's enemy number one. Pakistan is one of only 3 countries recognizing the Taliban as the legitimate government, and now it's under intense pressure from the United States to get the Taliban to give up bin Laden.
We regard terrorism as an evil that threatens the world community. Concerted international effort is needed to fight terrorism in all its forms and manifestations.
Experts point out the Taliban itself is divided between hardliners and some who would prefer more cooperation with the West. Some analysts believe the United States should now offer ultimatums and incentives to the Taliban to give up bin Laden, at least as a first measure before a military attack. Christiana Manpour, CNN, London.
Prayer has become the order of the day for many Americans. In fact, just tonight, a prayer vigil was held in the First Baptist Church here in Clarion. TV5's very own Carrie LaPue was there. Carrie?
Thank you, Susan. Since Tuesday night, the community of Clarion has come together to pray for the victims and their families after the fatal tragedies on Tuesday that occurred in New York and Washington. Tonight, community members gathered at First Baptist Church on Main Street to pray for the broken relationships that have affected many friends and families who have lost loved ones. Community members are offering all that they have through song and through prayer. Prayer vigils will continue to be held throughout the rest of the week as the nation continues to mourn. Live in the newsroom, Carrie LaPue, TV5 News. Back to you, Pat and Susan.
Thanks, Carrie. A community silent walk will be held in conjunction with the slated National Day of Prayer and Remembrance previously declared by President George W. Bush. Beginning at 11 a.m. tomorrow at Clarion University's Gemmell Memorial Park, located at the corner of 9th Avenue and Wood Street, 3 wreaths will be laid in memory of all the victims of this week's terrorist attacks, including firefighters, police officers, and rescue personnel. Following the laying of the first wreath, the police and a fire escort will then lead participants to the Clarion Fire and Hose Company No. 1 at 525 Wood Street, where the second wreath will be placed. The walk will conclude at the park across from the Clarion County Courthouse, where the third and final wreath will be laid. All members of the Clarion and surrounding communities, along with Clarion University students, faculty, and staff, are invited to participate in the silent walk. Community participants are asked to park by 10:45 a.m. in Lot 5 next to Carrier Administration Building. As a reminder, an Interfaith Campus Community Prayer Vigil will be held on Sunday, September 16th at 8 p.m. in Marek Boyd Auditorium. All members of the university and larger community are invited. Also, this note to pass along to you, the Clarion Ministerial Association's prayer vigil scheduled for Friday has been relocated to the Immaculate Conception Church.
With the week's tragic events, many people around the nation are missing loved ones. With all the confusion around the nation, several hotlines have been installed to help family and friends find loved ones. Here are some of the numbers for you. American Airlines 1-800-245-0999. United Airlines 1-800-932-8555. American Red Cross 1-800-HELP NOW. We'll show these numbers at the end of the show for anyone who missed them.
Taking a quick look at local news, reports of gas prices ranging between $3 and $4 around the country have not affected Clarion gas prices. Around Clarion, prices have stayed relatively low. Reports say that Clarion's gas supply was not affected by Tuesday's terrorist attacks, and officials feel that if people do not panic, then the prices should remain low as supply remains constant. Now let's move on to some other news of local interest. Clarion County Commissioners have narrowed their choices from 14 to 2 for the location of the new Human Services Building. The properties are on Greenville Pike in Clarion Township and beside the county jail in Paint Township. Commissioners are expected to announce their final decision for the new building in early October. Now let's go over to Chris Portman with a look at this weekend's forecast.
Thanks, Pat and Susan, and now let's take a look at our weather this evening. Now, if you look at our national map tonight, we can see that we have two high-pressure systems, one here and one here, and they will slowly move across the United States. But what will probably happen is the low-pressure system that we see right here that's going to be moving through our area is definitely going to bring some showers, some clouds, and some thunderstorms tonight and early tomorrow morning. We also have some low-pressure systems, and in those systems, look for probably, again, some clouds, some rainstorms. Those are located on the west and especially in Florida. Now, if we look at our national map, we can see in some of the major cities, especially in New York, we have some clouds, some rainstorms. Washington, D.C., though, is going to be sunny. You can see in Miami, Florida, where that low-pressure system is, there's going to be thunderstorms. If we look into Topeka, Kansas, it's going to be sunny, and into the west, San Francisco, partly cloudy, and it's the same with Los Angeles, partly cloudy. Now, this map is particularly important. It shows the precipitation in our area. If you see, again, in Pennsylvania, we're going to have rainstorms this evening, but especially important on the East Coast. If you can see, there is lightning concerns there. Remember that if you're going to be vacationing and going to be on the beach, if there's lightning, remain off the beaches, especially in the Florida area and even out into the other sections of the United States. Be careful of lightning. If we look at our 5-day planner, we can see Friday night it's going to get chilly. It's going to be 61 degrees. Make sure you bundle up, wear a sweatshirt or a jacket to those Friday night football games. Saturday it's going to be in the upper 50s, lower 60s. Sunday it's going to be about 64 degrees. Monday, make sure you send the kids off with a jacket or a sweatshirt. It's going to get chilly. It's going to be 64 degrees but sunny, and in the higher 60s, lower 70s on Tuesday. And that's your weather for TV5 News. Back to you, Pat and Susan.
Thanks, Chris. Brian Cook joins us now with a look at how the sports world is reacting to events around the nation.
Since the recent attacks on America, the leaders of our country are working endless hours to somehow bring a resolution to the nation's turmoil. This is synonymous to that of the leaders in the world of sports. National League Baseball Commissioner Bud Selig came to a decision to postpone Major League play, stating that security is an issue that must be addressed. He also stated that not playing this week is a sign of respect for the victims and the families who died in the tragedies. NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue has recently come to the conclusion to take time, grieve, and reflect. This week's pro football games have been called off. A decision on whether or not to reschedule is under consideration and will be announced as soon as possible. Despite indications to the contrary, Clarion's Golden Eagles will open its home season at Memorial Stadium this Saturday against Ohio's Tiffin in the annual Family Day game with kickoff set for 2 p.m. Clarion enters the game in a 0-2 deficit after losing to the final minutes to East Stroudsburg 33-27 and dropping a 44-0 loss decision at Youngstown State last Saturday. The running game will be paced by halfback Robert Walker along with fullback Demetric Gardner. Gardner leads the team with 23 carries for 139 yards and 1 touchdown. He now has 222 career carries for 17 yards and 8 touchdowns. Walker, meanwhile, has 16 carries for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. Clarion's defense is yielding 323 rushing yards and 145 passing yards and have allowed on average 38.5 points per game. The nation's sports executives are facing tough decisions this week as they pose the question to play or not to play. Players and managers want to show respect towards those Americans profoundly touched by Tuesday morning's terrorist attack on the United States by staying out of the spotlight. Still, others want to show a sound celerity by going on with life as usual to show that people will not bow down and shrink away from the actions of madmen. With more on sports is CNN's Tom Rinaldi.
There were endless replays, but there were no highlights. There were face masks, but there were no fields. There were true losses and no victories. Sports are played in their seasons, but September 11, 2001 was time without measure and event without season. Barry Bonds didn't swing. The Mariners didn't clinch. Michael Jordan didn't matter. The stadiums and their seats sat empty, like the rest of us. Like any airport in America, sports shut down, as it should be. Through history, our games have always been more than diversion. At flash points in time, they have given us something beyond joy and signaled our return to normalcy and served our desire to have work followed by play. In less trying times, they give us standings to measure our years. There is Joe DiMaggio swinging after World War II. There are the Olympics resuming after Munich's terror. There is Whitney Houston singing the national anthem during the Gulf War. If we wanted an anthem yesterday and to sing it in seats with our friends next to us, instead we had silence, or worse, chaos. Sports has again been relegated to the sidelines of society, a place in truth it rarely occupies, but a place it truly belongs in priority and perspective. If our games provide metaphors for living, life itself is enough for now. Yet, for how long? Our games, our teams, our players are part of the culture's core in America. They are not entertainment. They are the establishment. So there is a role the games can and should play when they can and should resume. Our sports will allow us, in given moments, to take our eyes from the solemn nature of our world and again measure victory without ultimate loss and celebrate triumph without a human price. Bonds will swing. The Mariners will clinch. Jordan will matter. But not now. I'm Tom Rinaldi.
That's it for TV. Thanks, Brian. We want to give you a few notes about our coverage of this event in the upcoming days.
We plan to bring you coverage next week, Tuesday or before, if coverage warrants.
That's all for our coverage tonight. Thanks for watching. And once again, here's a look at those phone numbers.